Read Junk. Read Junk. Read Junk Podcast.
ReadJunk Podcast with your host, my guy.
What's up, everyone? It's the ReadJunk Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Kremko, back with a new episode, this time with my buddy Steve Bauer, who writes for the site from time to time. We talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Warped Tour exhibit, which Steve visited, and I have two of my photos were hung up there, so he got to see them in person. I didn't. I decided to go to Disney World instead. So we talk about that for a little bit, you know, reminiscing about the Warped Tour. And then we talk about our punk and ska influences. Since I was kind of doing that on Instagram lately, we figured that would be a good topic of discussion. So we talk about what bands and albums and just songs that got us into punk and ska. And then like just kind of talked about like college radio a little bit and how things used to be back in the day of trying to discover new music. It was a fun chat. Definitely could have talked for another hour and a half or so. Before the episode starts, be sure to check out ReadJunk.com for news, reviews, and other stuff like that. Follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. I've been doing a lot of resharing on Facebook lately, just because it's like I'm just too lazy to post things on the actual website, so I just reshare. So just make sure that you like ReadJunk on Facebook and Instagram as well. Plus, I've been doing a lot of shirts lately, designing a lot. That's what I've been mainly focusing on. So it's getting to be the busy season of the holidays, so that's why I've been just cranked up my shirt design making. And definitely check it out on TeePublic at tpublic.com/user/Brian Kremko. I got like pop culture kind of stuff, TV, music, political, all types of different t-shirts. Something for everybody. There's a lot of sales going on right now, but I would definitely recommend buying something when there's something on sale, because you're saving like 35% off. Okay, enough of that whoring of that. If you aren't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify. You can listen to it on YouTube as well. Wherever you can get podcasts, pretty much. I'm going to try to do more episodes soon. Just have to schedule a bunch. But I'm going to be trying to get a lot more episodes in. I don't know how many per month, but we'll see what happens. It mainly comes down to me. But if you have something that you want us to discuss on the show, like Disney Plus reviews or more music reviews or talking about TV and geeky kind of things, just let us know. I'll gladly talk about that kind of stuff with somebody. It's going to line up the guests. In a way, I kind of prefer those type of shows, like radio type shows, as opposed to just like one-on-one interviews sometimes, because I have to come up with all those interview questions. But yeah, so let me know. So let's get started. This is Steve and I talking about Warped Tour exhibit at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and our ska and punk influences right here on the ReadJunk Podcast. All right, so I'm here talking with Steve. You used to write for the website, not as much as you used to.
Yeah, laziness has set in, as well as adult life.
Yeah, adult life, day jobs. I hear you. I'm in the same boat half the time. So, but yeah, today we wanted to talk about the Warped Tour exhibit at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, since I never got a chance to go there, and we wanted to pretty much just go over our ska and punk influences. So I guess, how was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I wanted to get there, since I had actually had two of my photos there. But it was either that or Disney World, and I picked Disney World.
Well, thankfully it's in my backyard. So, it's really surreal to see a Warped Tour exhibit in the Rock Hall. It's one of the two times in my life, I think, when I really felt super old. As far as the exhibit was good, I think it was really, really well done. I think the big thing that I noticed just living it was capturing all of the different eras of the Warped Tour. And it's kind of crazy. Like you have this, initial wave probably from the start of it till around 2000. And then like this like 2000 to probably mid 2000s. And then this latter day Warped Tour. And I think it did a good job of capturing everything. Obviously your pictures with of Aaron Barrett with Real Big Fish and Jay Bentley of Bad Religion does a great job capturing that first part of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the one photo of Jay was one of my first Warped Tours of shooting it, so it wasn't the best photo. I'm surprised that they wanted to use it, but hey, they had, for people that don't know, they got, I guess Jay kept his pajamas that he wore on stage all those years. He told me, I guess, on Instagram that it was that he kept it in like a locker or like like one of the storage units, and so when he was looking for things, he found that, and then I don't know, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame reached out to me and got some. They wanted to use some photos, so they picked out these shitty photos that I took, but I mean, at least it captured the moment.
What year was that?
I'm thinking it's probably 90. I'm going to say 98.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I remember them being on that one. I mean, that was a great year for Warped Tour. I mean, it's one of those things you look back on. It's like, I can't believe they got all those bands at that time. And even when you look at the second stage, I mean, in the DC area, we had like the Amazing Royal Crowns, Hepcat, Pie Tasters. I mean, it was just like a murderer's row on the second stage.
It was just a good eclectic mix of ska, punk, some reggae, and then maybe one or two mainstream acts and stuff like that. But it was like that era was the best of the Warped Tour. And it's like anything after that, it felt like a disappointment after every year.
Yeah, I mean,
For me anyway.
Oh, no, totally. I went, what is this, 2019 now? I went about 6 years ago, and I felt completely out of place. It was, Real Big Fish, Big D and the Kids Table played. They were incredible. I saw Motion City Soundtrack, and they were awesome. But, that's one of those times I really felt like, wow, our era really captured something at that time from in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, I don't want to sound old man when I was like 20 and say like, oh, the old days. But at the same time,
it's true,
at the same time, those bands I just remember that first Warped I went to. I mean, it was Rancid, Specials, Deftones. I mean, your mainstream act was like Say Ferris, who played like fourth.
Yeah. I don't know if for our one or the one that was at Randall's Island, it was like Kid Rock, or maybe that was later. And I was like, who the fuck is this?
It definitely was Kid Rock. And then I feel like after Kid Rock played, I want to say like either Far or Quicksand, one of those kind of post-hardcore bands played. And it was just this weird juxtaposition.
Okay. Just on a side note, that your cat ran through the screen, and then now I can't see you.
Oh, there we go. She did. I had to pick her up and put her on the floor. She's we have two cats. One of them's sleeping very soundly in the bed, and she's like wants to be on the podcast.
Yeah, and so then the other photo that so the first photo that they wanted to use was the one of Jay in his pajamas from Bad Religion, and then the second one was, which was like a couple weeks afterwards, after going back and forth with Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I guess they were using one of Aaron's guitars, and I think it was from 2013. Ish.
Okay.
It was like a blue Hawaiian kind of style. And so it wasn't at a Warped Tour, but it was at one of their headline shows. So I had one of their photos. So that was a better photo, but it was kind of cool to have two photos, and it just sucked that I couldn't get there. I think the exhibit just closed recently, or is about to.
It did. There's a new exhibit that's opening in a couple weeks. But no, I mean, the exhibit overall was great, though. It's
through the years.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to the latter half of things, it definitely is that. I mean, starting in that like mid 2000s period, but they definitely did a great job of like, capturing what it was and, people's opinions of Warped Tour for better, for worse. So like, definitely for a certain sect of kids and for a certain generation, I mean, it definitely demarcated this like time and place.
So, I mean, as you walk through the exhibit, what is it like the first thing that you see there? Is it like the first year of Warped Tour?
No, actually, it's the way they did it really wasn't chronological. It was it almost looked like what they had. So there was a dress from Hayley Williams of Paramore. There was Jay's pajamas. There was, definitely a number of instruments that were there as well. You noted Aaron's guitar. I think there was a few drum heads and stuff like that. But there was kind of this central part of the exhibit, and in it was a lot of like, a photo here, kind of a press photo pass there. And that was the craziest thing, because there were things in the exhibit that I have in my own collection. It's like, oh, there's the program from 2002. And it's like, just encased in, plastic there for everyone to see in the Rock Hall. So, if they ever want a copy, they can have an extra one of mine. But
I mean, I'm sure would have been some stuff that I've had over the years. Like I remember like getting the Real Big Fish, like 3-song cassette demo tape that I got at Warped Tour 96. And some, but I mean, I sold all the stuff on eBay. It's like, I need money. Right. So it's like, I saw all these posters and all this kind of stuff. That was my first Warped Tour, though. It was 1996 at Action Park. So, at amusement park. So it was kind of cool.
Was it at like the Action Park with like the death defying rides?
Yes, it was that was there. It was, so it's like you would, so it was the only time they had it at that one. And you can do the rides and then you can do the Warped Tour. So we did both. And then it was, so 1 minute you're looking over and I'm all of a sudden I see Angelo and Fat Mike and NoFX and everyone. And I think guys from the Figs were all going on a ride that I was going on too. So it was kind of surreal.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I just remember Angelo, his ass was hanging out because he had like his overalls, but he didn't have like any underwear on. And it just, it's like one of those vivid like memories.
Yeah. Classic Fishbone.
Yeah, and I remember not seeing Fishbone. I think they were playing too late, and then the same thing for like NoFX, and then I think I saw Dancehall Crashers, and I'm trying to think of who the other band was that I really wanted to see. I remember seeing Blink-182 the first time, and they're playing that little tiny dinky trailer stage.
Yeah.
And then it's like the next year they're playing this huge main stage. It was just kind of funny to see the progression of them.
It is crazy. I mean, there were a lot of bands that kind of grew up and grew around that. But I mean, it was also, I mean, the one thing that was cool as well is that the bands that played over and over again. So like, your Less Than Jake's, Real Big Fish,
Pennywise.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely an area for kind of each of those bands, which was great because they're so much a part of the DNA of that whole tour.
And I think the reason why we wanted to go to that Warped Tour is the Bosstones were supposed to be playing, and back then we didn't really have like internet that would tell you who was playing what. That's when I just started my website practically back was in 96, 97. But we didn't know, and because Bosstones played the New York City date, but they didn't play the the Vernon, New Jersey date. So we get there and Bosstones aren't playing. We're like, shit. So I'm like,
that's a bummer.
Yeah, so that's what.
Yeah, that was always the thing you'd get jealous of is when they did switch up those tour dates. It was like, why does that city get that band and we get somebody who is less exciting to us?
Yeah, I mean, so you're the Cleveland scene. So I mean, how was that compared to New York City?
So here's what's interesting. I grew up in the DC area. So the
okay.
first one I went to was in DC. And that was just incredible. I mean, like, so vividly remember that day. I mean, like, the first band that played was the Smooths. And, like, right after that, it was, like, the Smooths to, like, US Bombs to the Aquabats to...
That was 98, right? Or 99?
Yeah. 98, yeah. To, like, Say Ferris and... I mean, and then, like I said, I mean, on the side stage, there was just like Hepcat played and the Pie Tasters, because it was a local DC show they played. And that was awesome. And then a couple years later, I went to school in Pittsburgh and lived in Pittsburgh for about 10 years. And I went to it twice there. And again, it was like, you know, there's actually a scene in the NoFX the VHS tape they put out years and years ago of Fat Mike outside of a club in Pittsburgh, and he would always like give nods to that. So one year I saw NoFX play in Pittsburgh. The next year it was Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, and he would, you know, call out things. And, you know, Anti-Flag were just, I mean, they lived there. They were just fixtures there. So, I mean, it was pretty incredible. And, you know, no matter what city. So I've saw it in those two cities. And then I also went to it in Cleveland a few years ago. And, you know, there's definitely like a very familial aspect to the whole thing. And I think that's, you know, that was great. And, you know, even when I was going a kid, when I was 18 to, you know, literally, you know, another lifetime later when I was, you know, in my mid 30s, it just like you go from being the kid to kind of being the elder statesman there, even at, you know, 36. But
yeah,
but you know, it gives you that different lens to see it all through. And it did make me appreciate those like early years as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have had plenty. I mean, looking back at of all the years that I've reviewed Warped Tour and of how much bitching I just did about it. It was like every year was just a bitch fest. So I mean, it's like, but it's now on the podcast. This is like my third or fourth time talking about Warped Tour. So I guess it's like, I don't know. Just like talking about it. And it's good memories when you think about it. It's good and bad. Unfortunately, I didn't go to the Atlantic City one this year. I'm kind of glad I didn't for the first one, because I think the first day, because it got like rained out a lot of the time. So
yeah, I was going to go to the Cleveland. It wasn't even a real date, so to speak. I know they were calling it Warped Tour, but really it was for the exhibit opening. And I looked at the lineup and it just wasn't for me. And I, you know, it was like
6 bands or something. And it was like, everyone was pissed off about it in Cleveland. Like, well, at least you got something, but it was just kind of like a highlight of what to expect at the other two better ones.
But classic Warped Tour, like at the last minute, they added the Slackers, and it was like, damn it, like this is sold out already. I would have totally gone just to see the Slackers, and
But then it's a whole argument of like, you know, well, do you go see the Slackers again when they just headline instead? You know,
exactly.
That's what the whole argument of Warped Tour is like. Well, do you really want to see these bands, like 5 or 6 bands, and they only play a half hour, you know, kind of thing? But I mean, it gave me great opportunities to see bands I never saw before, like Royal Crown Review and this, like you mentioned, the Smooths. I don't remember seeing them ever again. And at the time, Aquabats, like a lot of bands, like I didn't see. They wouldn't come and headline, or they just would do the Warped Tour every year. So
it was always amazing, the bands that surprised me too. And there's one that sticks out, and people can make fun of me for this all they want, but you know, I was walking by and you get that band that just like captures your attention, and it was Andrew WK. And I was just like, and it was just like this, like, you know, like if he were if he were a preacher, we would all be, you know, worshiping him, because it was like one of those just experiences where it was just such a fun, like uplifting time. And it's like, I would have never thought I would have never gone to an Andrew WK show by myself in a million years. And then like a few months later, I saw it again, like thinking like, oh, was that a fluke? And it's like, no, he's pretty good live.
He's he's got skinheads in his band. So he's okay.
And also a guy who kind of reminds me of Paul Stanley from Kiss, but wears Hawaiian shirts. So it's, you know, just this everything.
Yeah, I think I went to a Warped Tour when he played, but I don't know if I really stayed. I remember it was like Black Eyed Peas played, and that was kind of like, and like, The only like hip hop band I really liked for Warped Tour was Jurassic 5, and like that was like the one that's like they, were just true, like it's just a good rap group. And I don't know, the other ones is just like they just threw on just because it was the popular thing to do at the time. Or like Katy Perry, I remember when she just blew up, like they put her on, and that was like 2008, I think. And I remember like Green Day. I wasn't a fan of Green Day back in the day, but like now I am. But back when they played Warped Tour, I was like, oh, get the fuck out of here! Like this is supposed to be like a smaller kind of band kind of tour. And
well, that was the funny thing about like when I remember when Green Day played, and it was almost like, what the hell is Green Day doing on Warped Tour? And that was like, I feel like they had like, yeah. Well, it was like pre-American Idiot, and it was that time. It's like, is Green Day really going to make it? Are they gonna be, a Warped Tour band now? And then, a couple years later, American Idiot came out and everything changed again. But it was one of those, like, one year, like, I remember like Weezer played, and I know they didn't play any dates around any of the cities that I lived in, but it was another one of those where it's like you guys were gigantic. And I don't know. I think there's just something about the atmosphere and all the people. Like you talked about Jurassic 5 there for a second. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like their vibe just totally vibed with what was going on at Warped Tour. I mean, even though they were
egos, they didn't have like the egos.
Exactly.
Like they had DJs in the band. They had, I don't know if they had guys that played instruments, or maybe I'm thinking of the Roots. The Roots were another band that kind of fit with the Warped Tour a bit.
Totally.
But yeah, like those two bands were like the ones I can think of. And then they had Eminem, which I remember Dropkick Murphys getting in fights with them, and
oh my God,
throwing shit out of them. Yeah.
It's so funny you bring that up. I found this like MTV clip of Warped Tour. I feel like it was in '97. And like, this is just like, Dickie from the Boss Tones is kind of walking everyone through it. And like they walk by Sick of It All, and like Real Big Fish is in it, and Social D and the Descendants played that year. But then all of a sudden it takes this bananas pivot to Sugar Ray and Limp Bizkit. And it's like, what the, and looking back on it now, it's like, there's definitely payola in there, because it's like there's no way, like, you're featuring all these seminal like hardcore punk ska bands, and then all of a sudden it's like Mark McGrath and Fred Durst, and it's like, yeah.
Hey, I just saw that guy back at Epcot last month.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh, the one song I like when it's over, they were playing as I was walking by before Illuminations, or was it Illumination? Yeah, whatever. But yeah, so it was like funny seeing Sugar Ray playing Epcot.
And you were like, yeah, I got the one song. That was cool.
Yeah, that's the one song I like. Yeah, I remember those cheesy like MTV kind of like Warped Tour, like almost like infomercials in a way.
Yeah.
Do you remember on MTV they had like when they used to have Lollapalooza, they would do like they would play like the entire concerts there too. That was great.
Oh yeah.
Like I remember seeing the Bosstones on MTV playing that, and
totally.
The other bands that I can't think of that played Lollapalooza, maybe the Ramones, Chili Peppers or something. But yeah, it's like I used to like all those back when MTV used to be very music related.
Yeah, wouldn't play music at all.
I feel like they can like just rebrand and capitalize on like just be like a YouTube station, but I don't know. There's like so much like music related things they can do, but they still just have the same shit on.
Well, the thing that gets me about it the most, and this is like the comparison I always make about it, is like it's music television. I want to go to a TV station, and I like the music news stuff as much as the videos and everything else. Like if it's music adjacent, fantastic. But like if like they all of a sudden stopped doing like food stuff on the Food Network, or stopped featuring homes on like HGTV, people would revolt. And it's like, it's like, why can't we get a decent music television station, even if it's just something for us to bitch about? Like, just give us something.
Yeah, I mean, like, have indie hour, bring back Headbangers Ball, have back the 120 minutes, like, bring this stuff back. And, like, people are like, the amount of times that I've talked about this on the podcast, it's like people are kind of craving something like that again. And I don't know, I just feel like they're dropping the ball here, like usual.
Totally.
We'll start our own on YouTube. And
yeah, I mean,
yeah, right.
I think that's what's gonna happen eventually. Is someone's just gonna do it. And I mean, who knows with all of the new streaming everything? Maybe there'll finally be a music streaming channel that's, you know, not just like the jukebox that's free on the 9,000 channels on AT&T.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like people are still craving music videos, and people are still making them and spending money into that. You think they would focus on that? I mean, I don't remember the last time I'm watching MTV, but I figured it's still like just reality TV kind of crap. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But we went on a weird tangent here. MTV.
Totally.
Let's circle back around to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So, I mean, what other things kind of stood out as far as the exhibit?
You know, I think it was nice to have the celebration of what Warped Tour was, the different moments that people were able to have, and you know, and like I said, I mean, there was the exhibits themselves. It was one of those pieces where I kind of got through my bands and was looking at the other bands, and I'm like, okay, like I know that band's name. Like that band's called We the Kings, or that band's called, you know, Falling in Reverse. But it's what was the more bizarre thing to me about that is like these are bands from like 6 years ago, and it you know, as they go through the retrospective, that's definitely important to a certain era of people. But I think as you know, the exhibit itself was concerned, it was one of those things where it gave you this good sense of feeling nostalgic. It gave you this good sense of, you know, oh, after we left it, you know, it never went away. The kids picked it up. Like maybe I'm not into these bands that I just named, but you know, here's like somebody's shoes. Here's somebody's guitar pick. You know, here's somebody's all their laminates from certain years. And I think, you know, it in a way was kind of a humble exhibit, just kind of like Warped Tour was. I mean, it was when you went there, you had all the, you know, you had the booths and everything like that. But really, it was just, I mean, literally, it was bands playing on the back of a truck. And and I think in a way, like the exhibit kind of reflected, you know, the band's back on a truck thing where it's like, oh, here's someone's, you know, here's someone's clothes, here's someone's instrument, here's, you know, some stuff that someone kind of left lying around. And, you know, the exhibit was well done. It wasn't
underwear.
I don't remember if there was any underwear.
There should have been the shorts that Warren from the Vandals wore, because he would always wear them and hike them up.
Totally. It's I mean, the thing is that I will say about it is every piece of clothing was like, thank God it was encased behind glass, because it just looked smelly. And it looked smelly, and it also looked like brittle, like, you know, like if it was Jay's pajamas, it's like, yeah, he put those away in some crate like, you know, 15 years ago. Yeah. They've been sitting there since then. And who knows what kind of dead skin, sweat, blood,
just on
tears.
One day alone at Warped Tour of how hot it could be. It, like the stench.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, here's your clothespin as you walk through the exhibit.
Yeah, totally. But, you know, the one thing that did strike me about it, and, you know, it was a little bit smaller than I wanted it to be. And, you know, I've been to the Rock Hall a number of times. I'm a member there because they have a lot of cool events and, you know, bring in a lot of people. But, you know, it was definitely kind of in an alcove. And, you know, while there was stuff there, it wasn't kind of the sprawling exhibit that I hoped it would be. But so it was a little bit of a bum out because you kind of do like a circle around the room and it's like, okay, like, I mean, like that was cool.
So I made the right decision of going to Walt Disney World instead of rock and roll.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, look at some smelly sneakers from 5 years ago or fly on the Millennium Falcon. Yeah.
And no offense, like Cleveland, I'm like, all right, what else can I do there?
It's we've lived here for about 7 years now. It's I mean, there's more here to do than I thought, but knowing where you live in New York City, I mean, you definitely went in the things to do department.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, overall, you think you enjoyed it, but it was too small. I mean, it's
totally
nothing they can fix now since it's over. But
yeah. Yeah, it was cool to see. It was cool to give it a moment, but I had, definitely wished there was a little bit more there. And, because there was a nice story that it was kind of weaving through it as well. And it would just being able to flesh that out a little bit more would have been great.
Mm-hmm. Well, oh well. It sounded cool. I mean, I definitely, if I wasn't planning on going to, if I wasn't going to Disney World, I probably would have tried to make an attempt to come over. I was like trying to think of like, oh, should I go to Chicago and then drive over, kind of thing? Because I've never been to Chicago either. But
it's a long drive.
Yeah. I mean, was it like 3 or 4 hours?
Yeah, it's about 4.5 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think by not attending, I don't think other than like, getting to see your work in this museum, which is, I mean, that was like, even them not being my pictures and, having written for the site, it's like, oh, look what happened. Look what Brian did.
Didn't get paid for it. I would have got free admission. That was, but I was like, they gave me, that's not true. They gave me a couple hundred for the tickets for the Warped Tour, but I was like, yeah. I'm like, I got some money for it, but
did they give you like a plaque or anything or some sort of like recognition?
Oh, sorry. Wait, I'm getting confused. I think Warped Tour, they wanted to use they gave me tickets.
Okay.
The Warped Tour, the actual Warped Tour people gave me tickets and some money for using my photos on social media, but the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they were going to give me just free admission. But no, that was it. That was like no plaque or anything. It's just like, hey, can we use your photo? And it's like, and it's I'm kind of like at the point now where it's like, all right, no one's going to see like just for credit of my name, besides other photographers. So I was like kind of hesitant at first, and then everyone's like, come on, and it's just like, get this. And then you have bragging rights saying that you had something hanging up at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it. But other times it's like, no, fuck off, pay me. Like, I don't care if it's $20, pay me.
Right.
All right, so we wanted to, I was kind of posting this on Instagram just to do post something, I guess, because I've been running out of ideas, but I was kind of doing like my top 10 of like punk influences of songs over the years that kind of was like listening to. So you kind of wanted to discuss some of that and talk about our punk influences, and then I guess we can do ska and stuff like that too. Did you make like any type of list or?
I did make a list. This is the organized nature of myself. But I had a question for you before I jumped into any of my stuff. So, around what year did you get into punk?
I can't pigeonhole what year it was, because it was like I was listening to the Ramones, probably the first of that, and that was probably back in like the late 80s, I would think. I was probably like in like fourth or fifth grade, because I had my older brother was 4 grades ahead of me, so he was the one that got him and his friends would make mixtapes, and so I would listen to that stuff. So I definitely, the Ramones would be the first, but I didn't think of the Ramones as like a punk band and like I'm listening to a punk band. I was just like, oh, they're like a rock band.
The Ramones.
Yeah, the Ramones. So it's like, yeah. So, and it was that Ramones Mania album. That was the one that my brother got. Yeah. I think it was a CD, one of his first CDs that I think he got. I think that one came out in 88 or 89. But I mean, that one, I still listen to that album to this day. It's still like one of those, the most influenced. But so I would probably say around 4th or 5th grade is when I started getting to, like, I started listening to some type of punk bands.
Was your older brother really a gateway for a lot of that? Because the one thing I definitely noticed, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of hardcore on this list.
Yeah, I mean, he it was him and his buddy from high school that we had like this one tape that I would just listen to, and my mom, I think at some point took the tape away because I don't know. I still, to this day, I can't figure out what band it was, but it was really filthy kind of, it wasn't gore or anything, but it was like some type of lyrics that was like very sexual. And my mom heard just like, what the fuck is this? and I'm like, I don't know. And she like ended up taking the tape away. And then future tapes, I ended up like just not including that band, but I have to this day, I don't know what band it is. But I remember like there was one band, Dayglow Abortions, and maybe it was them. Yeah. They're a Canadian band. They had Kill the Hosers. But for the longest time, I thought that the band, the song was called Kill the Posers. Because I'm like, I didn't know what a hoser was like at the time. So I was like, and I didn't know they were Canadian. But it was like, it's the joys of the internet of like in the late 90s of looking all this stuff up. I'm like, oh, it's Kill the Hosers. It's like, that was a song I used to listen to all the time. And then like Murphy's Law, Sit Home and Rot. Like that's like the only song I really like listen to, Murphy's Law. But so when I actually saw Murphy's Law like 6 or 7 years ago, I was like, man, why didn't they play that song? the one song I liked. I mean, like other songs of theirs, but yeah, it was like it was a lot of hardcore 80s. Yeah. Like, yeah, I don't know. It was just like, that's what my older brother Jason listened to.
So when you started getting into like kind of your stuff, where did you start? Like, where were your like first influences that were like Brian centric?
I don't know. It's like all the ones that I listed. I mean, like I was ones that, like I think the one band that I listed as number one was the Dead Kennedys. I'm like, that was the one that's like defined of, because my older brother and I we were just very into doing politics and political punk kind of thing. Right, mm-hmm. Right at that time, I think it was the Clinton era. Or maybe before that was Bush. I was in art class, I would do political cartoons and do all that kind of stuff. So I was right at around the right age of like getting into politics and doing political cartoons. So I think that's probably why Dead Kennedys were just like the Brian band for me. Nice. What about you?
I mean, to me, a lot of it like always comes down to the Descendants. I mean, I remember, like 1996, I remember being this like really super defining year for me in music. And, they were like one of those bands I got into that time. It was pretty amazing because like Everything Sucks had just come out. So they had this like brand new album that was amazing. And then just like going back, they had this like crazy history of all these records and all these different members. And, all the songs are just amazing. I mean, even to this day, like,
that's still their best album.
Oh, totally. And there's totally bands that, we listened to when we were younger and we're like, maybe not so much now, but like the Descendants, like I still get that same feeling from when I was 16 and started listening to them to like now. And, I got to see them the last 2 years, actually. I got to see them live. And then, even from there too, getting into the offshoots, like I got to see All like 3 or 4 times when they were kind of heavy in the late 90s. But, that record, that band, just like who they were, like the individuality of it all, like, it's like, hey, you don't need it. It was so punk rock without being like this overly like mohawked, like kind of cartoonish punk rock, because it was like, we are who we are. Like, I'm a super nerdy dude who's into science. You know, you have this drummer who's like played in Black Flag, but is also this amazing like songwriter. And, you know, the whole thing, like, best friends since they were like younger, and the whole thing just like, it was like the everything around that. And, you know, I mean, there's not one of their albums like that I don't like. I mean, it's Everything Sucks to me still is like, you know, it has such a fond place in my heart. And like, just front to back, I mean, there's not one bad song. There's, you know, some of the best songs they ever had were on that record too. Like, you know, I'm the One, Thank You.
When I
have
Get Old.
a fondness for the songs.
That
Exactly.
One I like.
Absolutely. So like that was a real big one for me.
I mean, you mentioned that. I mean, that was the album that I got into the Descendants in '96, and I think it was going back to MTV. I think it was 120 minutes when their music video came on, and I think I was taping it for probably some ska, to tape some ska, and that came on. I'm like, who is this band? I'm like, they sound good, like them and the Queers when they did the Punk Rock Girls. So I was like, seeing those guys,
Girls,
yeah. And then going back to Warped Tour, for the second year of going to Warped Tour at Asbury Park in '97, it was Descendants playing, and then I was trying to get over to go see them, and I was stuck in quotations seeing Social D, which I didn't really like them at the time, and then I was so like, oh, do I wait here to see the Bosstones play, or do I sit here and sit through Social D, or because it was like a mile down the road, so you couldn't like get to see the Descendants at the time I wanted. So it was like I didn't see the Descendants until like 2000 something when they like reunited it back. No, it was like, it must have been like 2008, something like around that time. That was the first time I saw the Descendants.
Yeah, I didn't get to see them till much later. I mean, I was in high school when that record came out, and you know, they came to DC twice, and I missed both of the shows, and it was like the biggest bum out, because after that, like, the guys started doing All again, and that's why I saw All so many times, because I was in like late high school, college. But I didn't get to see them till a few years ago either, and it was just like, it seemed like it was a religious experience for me. It was like, this is my favorite band of all time. I finally get to see them. Whenever they come around, if I'm ever around, I will absolutely go see them over and over again.
Yeah, and I think the first time that I did see them, it was one of those incidents where I wasn't on the guest list, and and then another photographer friend who was friends with H2O, he's like, here, I'm going to go hang out with Toby backstage. You can have my photo pass to go take pictures of the Descendants. I'm like, oh man, thank you. Yeah, so I was like, I was at the Roseland Ballroom in New York City, which is no longer, and I think I don't know what the hell it is. It's a big giant hole, I think now.
The first time I went to see them, I actually drove to Detroit to go see them, because I wasn't sure if they were going to come to Cleveland, and it was pretty amazing, because the band that opened up for them, this band Radkey played first, but then the band that played right before them, was the Suicide Machines. And like, it was just like Suicide Machines and the Descendants. It was like, okay, like I can die happy. Like, this is amazing. And I've seen the Suicide Machines so many times over the years, but
I'm going to see him,
you know, even like, nice. Even Jay from the Suicide Machines was like, all right, we're going to get up here and get off as quickly as we can, because all I want to do is see the Descendants. And it's like, you know, when there's so much love for that band from the other bands, and, you know, I'm a huge fan of Jay and the Suicide Machines, like, and for him to say that on stage, it was just like, yeah, like, this is amazing.
I think that was the same tour, because I remember seeing Suicide Machines with Descendants, and I think it was Descendants, H2O, and Suicide Machines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think Radkey I didn't see until they opened up with Rise Against, and I was like, who the fuck's this band? You guys are awesome. And like,
totally,
they sound like the Misfits too. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So what's some other bands that were very influential to you? Besides
I'm going to bring them up. I'll bring them up second because you mentioned them. But that same year, 96, Social D put out White Light, White Heat, White Trash.
Yeah.
And like I immediately there's just something about that record that clicked with me, and like I became a huge Social D fan. And it was the same thing with the Descendants. I started going back and getting the self-titled, got somewhere between Heaven and Hell, like, and have followed them ever since. And it was, that between those two bands as well, totally, like, I just started falling in love with like early 80s, like LA hardcore and punk, like, X, the Circle Jerks, the the Germs, all of those bands, like, were just amazing.
Circle Jerks were one of my definitely ones up there. Yeah. I forget.
So like, it was a comeback record for Social D too. And it was, the funniest thing about that too is that both the Descendants and Social D, after those records, I feel like took some time off, and then they both released records, like, I feel like 8 years later, like the same year again. So there's just this weird serendipitous thing with like those things happening and the bands like I've gotten into. And I mean, that was another huge one for me. Like if I'm putting up like the pillars of the bands that got me into punk rock, like, they're definitely right there.
Yeah, going back, I'm like, I made the stupid mistake of just not listening to some of these bands until later on. And I don't know what it was. I think it was because I was into the political street punk kind of, or like the hardcore kind of stuff, and not so much the Epitaph or Fat Wreck stuff. My friend Paul, like, listened to everything Fat Wreck, like every single album, was like, oh God, it's like it took me so many years to listen to NoFX because it was just so fucking whiny. And it's just like, I think it was, I think it was their TV series, the Backstage Passport show, that made me kind of like open up and like their music and like of what kind of band they are and how they're just goofballs and like something like that. But yeah, it's like a lot of these bands I was like a late bloomer, I guess, when it comes to NoFX and Epitaph and even Pennywise. I mean, Pennywise were one of the first, I think, Epitaph kind of bands, besides, I guess, Bad Religion. Yeah, but it's like there's just a lot of fat bands I don't think I really got into until late 90s. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to, like, back then there was just this like treasure trove of everything. So it was crazy how, like, you could get like super specific, but also have like 50 bands of that like super specificness that you could listen to. Like, honestly, like from you brought up Fat Wreck. I like to know effects, but the other bands on the label, like, I like to know use for a name, but a lot of the other ones just kind of blew by me. I did the same thing, came back to them later, but I was definitely, my tastes of punk bands were definitely idiosyncratic. When you listen to, like, Descendants and Social D, both Southern Cal punk rock, but two totally different bands. I mean, it's, it was great that there was all of this stuff out there that we could listen to, and it didn't have to be like, just three bands and that was it. Yeah, I mean, there was a few ways to find out bands back then. It was either through friends or older brothers, or looking at the liner notes of who the other bands thanked, or seeing what other, when they had, like, I think Alternate Tentacles had like their catalog, or like you would look up other bands and like, oh, Jello's played with DOA. Let's check out that. And, that's like the way you would find other bands. So it was like kids that are growing up now just don't realize how hard it was back then. And it was probably even 10 times tougher before us too. And, you had to go to a record store and look. I've done that plenty of times too, towards the tail end of record stores, of buying albums. I'm like, this sucks. And I'm thinking this is a punk album, and it's not. And I got to return it. And I was like, it was tough.
It was definitely tough. I mean, it was, so like, that being said, one of the things I had written down was like, I just ingested so many different comps at this time. Like, the Punk-O-Rama comps, there were so many ska compilations that were out
comps
there.
The other thing. Yeah.
And it was like, and it was great because it's like, generally they were like, they were a lot cheaper. I mean, they were anywhere from like $2 to like maybe $6. They're packed with bands. And then it was like, okay, like, this is my, like, this is my taster, and who am I going to, invest in? Because, we were all kids, and CDs were not cheap. I mean, even if you went to a used store and could get stuff for like, $7-8, it was still like,
it adds up, believe me.
Absolutely. I mean, I think back to all the money I've spent over the years on, CDs, and, but that was the great thing about those compilations. It was, like a lot of the ska compilations. I mean, like one that was like very near and dear to my heart, because I grew up there, was a DC ska comp, and like, the bands on it were like the Pie Tasters were on it, the Skunks were on it, Checkered Cabs,
right?
Decepticons.
I remember them.
Yeah, and then like this band, the Instigators, who I really like too. And it was great because it's like, okay, like here's all these bands and some of these bands did not have full lengths out, but it's like, oh, I have this little piece, and it's like, yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Checkered Cabs. I only have this one song, but like it's the best song ever. And I mean, that was a big thing, in getting into, all of these genres was that piece of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially how I got into ska. Was I started out with punk for years, and then my dad got Bob Marley, Legend, at a garage sale. So then that kind of like, it's inevitable that I'm going to be listening to ska after that, after having punk and then reggae. And then like, Jimmy Cliff was like in Club Paradise. So then I'm getting like Club Paradise music, and with Robin Williams. And then, so one of my first, the compilation album that I still think is one of the best ska compilations is Ska the Third Wave compilation. It had Toast.
Oh, totally.
So Mephistopheles, Toasters, Mustard Plug, Emery 330, Scofflaws, Pie Tasters, a bunch of other people. But that was, and then my friend also, I think the year before that, it was like the Bosstones, man, the Bosstones. He was the guy that always had to be first, that's like, I like they're my band, and but yeah, so I mean, it's like the Bosstones, I think More Noises and Don't Know How to Party, and then many people don't know this, that for our senior year in high school, there was a battle of the bands, and we did the Bosstones someday, I suppose. I didn't play anything. I tried to play the drums. I'm didn't really do good enough job. So I ended up being like a Bosstone, and ended up just dancing on the stage. There's footage of it somewhere. I'm trying to burn the tape. But we ended up like stuffing the ballots and winning the battle of the bands. And we ended up having like all the kids that were like in band, and then we had the music teacher ended up being the drummer because I couldn't do it.
That's awesome.
And it's just, and my friend was like and my friend Rob, Robert, he ended up being in like a hardcore band or something afterwards, but he was trying to do like rapping of Someday I Suppose, and it was just so bad, and everyone was just so out of tune. It's like one of those footage that's like, please never show this to anybody. And like, and like, I didn't know how to skank, and I was kind of doing like the Running Man almost. It's definitely blackmail video, but yeah, that was my early stages of ska.
Yeah. I feel like for so many people, like the Boss Tones were that touchstone. And even like whether it was the people who got into them with like the impression that I get or before, like I got into them. I actually knew who the Boss Tones were before I knew what ska was. And like I remember like them, like they played Lollapalooza, I feel like in like 95 or something like that.
Yeah.
But then that summer they were also in Clueless, and it's like, who's that band? They're awesome. And like, you know, I got, you know, a couple of their EPs. I got the Where'd You Go EP and the Ska Core, The Devil and More, which was awesome too, because I had like a Minor Threat song on it, a Bob Marley song. And like, you know, for like this small period of time of maybe like a year and a half, I had that same thing that your friend had, where it's like, yeah, this is my band. I'm the coolest. You guys don't know what's going on.
But yeah, I mean, it wasn't just the Boss Tones. I mean, they were definitely a part of it, and they were definitely like. And I don't even think he knew what ska was. He's just like, this is one of these bands that were all wearing plaid, and he's like, "Oh, this is my band." And then he started wearing plaid everywhere, and then we all started wearing plaid. I mean, I wore plaid back in the grunge days too, but
easy transition.
Yeah. But besides the Boss Tones and the ska, the third wave, it was also college radio had a big part to do with things too. Of the Jesse from Skavuvi, he went to Vassar College, so I would listen to his radio show, and I used to tape all the songs that I used to like. So I'm like, I got into a lot of old Jamaican ska and two-tone and that kind of stuff through college radio, and that was a big jumping off point of other bands besides, you know, Moon Records and just getting every album from that.
I totally agree. I came through it as well too, another weird way. So like growing up, our family, like we didn't have cable, but my dad's an engineer, and like he worked for NASA. So we had like a satellite dish, and like just to give kind of, yeah, totally. And we had a satellite dish, and it was not like a direct TV. Like this was like a full scale, like I'm pointing the dish toward a certain like relay satellite that has this signal, and
like one of those big fucking big kind of satellite dishes?
Oh, totally.
Wow.
Absolutely. And the thing is that we didn't have cable, but we had like this smattering of channels. And literally, like you had to point to a satellite, and one of the satellites I pointed to had MTV2. Oh. And MTV2 was basically a college radio station at the time, because they played like all of the 120 minutes stuff, or stuff I would later find out was 120 minute stuff, but then like a ton of other stuff too, like you know, they would block stuff out, and, you know, that's where I saw, you know, videos from the Toasters. I saw Let's Go Bowling. The first time I saw Real Big Fish, I think it was like right around the time they turned the radio off, and it was the video for Everything Sucks.
Yeah, 96, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I like everyone else kind of got that exposure to Real Big Fish with Sellout, but I was like, no, like Everything Sucks is like, that's the video, that's the song, like you have to check this one out. And there was just so many of those, you know, ska bands. You know, they would play the old stuff too. They played the Fishbone Party at Ground Zero video, which is a trippy video. If anyone ever gets a chance to watch it, I would totally suggest, like,
it's been a while.
Totally get that on YouTube. It is like crazy in like the best way possible. But there was all of these things, and then on the punk side, like they'd show Mr. T Experience, The Queers, New Bomb Turks, The Descendants, because, you know, that was right around the time Everything Sucks came out. And, you know, it was really kind of awesome that there was, you know, and we were talking a little earlier about MTV, but like M2 was like this totally formidable, awesome thing. And, you know, it definitely was great for a couple of years. Eventually, you know, it turned into, you know, MTV Part 2, not to the good MTV Part 2, the reality TV, etc. But there were so many bands, and it was at this awesome time in punk and ska where, if you like Let's Go Bowling had a music video. Like,
Yeah,
I just
don't
reflect on that.
I don't remember if I discovered them through MTV or if I think I got it. I got it through early on. They were one of the early ska albums. I was trying to make up all the list of all the early ska stuff because one of my brother's friends used to work for Caroline Records Distribution. And,
oh yeah, totally.
He talking about pirating music. He would take a bin of all the stuff this is how I got a lot of my first ska albums. He would take the albums, put it in the bin, go in the back of the door, close the door, put the bin outside, and then go get it later on. So he was pretty much like stealing all these albums. I ended up getting fired at some point, but I ended up getting Skankin' Pickles, like Mephistopheles, Toasters,
Totally.
Voodoo Glow Skulls, like all those.
I was just gonna bring up Voodoo Glow Skulls. Like that was one of the video. They had a video for Fat Randy, and like when you are 16 years old, the Voodoo Glow Skulls is everything you want out of a band. Like it is fast, it's crazy, it is like, you can mosh to it, you can dance to it. Like I like Voodoo Glow Skulls. Like as I was making the list of all this, I was like, I have to make sure we bring them up. Yeah,
they're definitely up there as far as just that first album is still just one of the best things they've ever done. And definitely just like a crossover of type of ska and punk hardcore kind of blend. And it just reminded me of like Cheech and Chong, the Up in Smoke, like the band with the, earache in my ear. And they'd like just like these Latino guys playing with like horns and stuff. And it was just like, and then they end up having the clips from the movie and on that album too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like, and then I got into ska right around, it was like 90, 95, 96. And I think that's like Pezcore with Less Than Jake. I think it was Skanarchy compilation. I think they had My Very Own Flag on it. And then that's when Losing the Streak came out. And that's when like they blew up from that. And then at some point when we went to college in when the fuck did I go to college? 97. We started doing a college radio show, and that's when we started getting like free music from Moon Ska. And so that was like a lot of our means was getting it free through that way. And that's how I came to be, how ReadJunk came to be. It was ska punk and underjunk back then, but that's how it came to be. It was like I'm like, I want to do the zine stuff. Like, so I ended up doing like a printout zine for maybe like one or two things that I would bring to like to ska shows down in the wetlands. And then I'm like, fuck it, I'll just do this on GeoCities. And that's how, that's how it came to be at the site that, just doing it.
Totally. We all started out with those great GeoCity sites.
Oh, I still remember the URL of it.
I mean, you're talking about comps and Less Than Jake earlier. Another big one was that the Misfits of Ska that Asian Man put out.
Yeah, 1 and 2.
The big band for me coming out of that one was the Blue Meanies. Like I loved that band. Like, I liked them on their album, but seeing them live, they were so loud. But I was always impressed by the drummer, though. I mean, like the drummer was really. Oh yeah, he was really good. But they just never fit any of the bills that they played, and I guess that's part of the reason why they stood out. No, I mean, tours that I saw them. The first time I saw them was opening up. They were the first band of 4, and it was them. Real Big Fish played second. Weston played third, and then Goldfinger was the headliner. And then the next time I tour, and then like the next time I saw them, I think they opened up for Weston again, but and then I saw them later with like Flogging Molly.
That's weird.
And the thing I love that band, and just everything. It was kind of a Voodoo Glow Skull sort of thing as well for me with that. Like, it's so chaotic, but it's like I've listened back to it as an adult, and like there's so much smart like musicianship happening there. The lyrics are just awesome with that, and Full Throttle especially, which was their second record, was like front to back. Like, I remember before one of their shows when I lived in Pittsburgh, I ran into Billy, their lead singer, and totally like the friendliest guy, to the point where like we were walking by each other, I introduced myself, and then he stopped me again and said like, "Hey, what song do you want to play? Do you want to hear us play tonight?" And it was like, I was like, "I want to hear I Am the Have Not," and they played it, and like it was one of those times where it's like I will never forget that show, the fact that he did that and was just an amazing person, and like that band is just like a all-timer for me.
Are they? I don't know. When was the last time like they like reunited? I feel like it's been a while.
They reunited on one of the Riot Fests because they're from Chicago, but like after they broke up, like I want to say like Billy, their lead singer's in like Arkansas, and then one of the guys, their keyboard player, I think, was in a band called Bitchy, which was this like, I feel like he was in Bitchy, which was like kind of a, like a hardcore punk, like Chicago band. But every once in a while they get back together, and it's one of those things where it's like I will drive to Chicago to come see you and always miss it. Like,
I feel like their last album, I don't remember if it was anything as good as the first two albums. It was like something different, right? It was like they kind of went. It was kind of more like a keyboard driven kind of rock instead of ska. I think.
It definitely was. Yeah, they got signed to a major for their last record, and like, it was a little bit more, how do I say it? It's a little bit more streamlined.
Yeah.
It wasn't as chaotic and all these different things happening. It was like more almost like straight ahead, but like there's a couple songs that, I think he had the megaphone on one song, but like I remember like Jane Wiedlin from the Go-Go's was on a song, and then like Wayne Kramer from the MC5 was on a song. So like, that was cool as shit. But and there's some real great songs on that record. I mean, I still like Full Throttle for me. That second record is still like the one. And even their live record that they did, like Wesley Willis introduced them, and like
Wesley Willis. Wow.
Yeah.
I remember my older brother getting that. I'm like, what the fuck is this? But I was like, it's like one of those things where it's like I used to put that. I used to have like a competition with somebody else. I used to write for their website. Her name was Lauren, but we used to do coming up with the worst music like compilations. So I would always put Wesley Willis on there. Rock and Roll McDonald's.
That's like one of those acts that could have only happened in the 90s.
Yeah,
like there were so many of those like weird acts and bands, and like.
It's like Jello, I think, discovered him, right?
I think it was so.
I think he was on alternate record, tentacles.
Yeah.
I'm going back, like looking at my old my punk list and stuff too, and there was a lot of bands I didn't include on my initial top 10, like The Exploited, Reagan Youth, 7 Seconds, DRI. Like all these like kind of like in between like crossover thrash metal bands, and I was like, because I was a metalhead too. I listened to like Alice Cooper and Ozzy and like that kind of stuff, and then going from like Suicidal Tendencies and then kind of discovering just like, oh, here's a Gnostic Front at a record store and getting that.
Totally.
I'm like, wow.
I mean
the
big one for me in like the DC area, I mean, like obviously like Minor Threat came from there, and like Fugazi was beloved, but like in high school, pretty early on when I was into punk, I got into the Bad Brains, and like, it was that was one of those bands where like I was looking at my top 10 and they were like literally, if I take out the compilations, they're on the top 10, but like they're like right there at number like 11 for me. Like it was just so those first two, the first album and then the Eye Against Eye, like, you know, was awesome. Like the song where like HR is like singing from a prison phone. I think it's Sacred Love. Like, you know, they like if there's any band that I could go back in time and see them when they were at their peak, it's Bad Brains. Like I hear
the
those
footage of them, like, just like how fucking like mayhem their shows were. Like them and Minor Threat, seeing them together would be like, wow. I would pay a lot of money for that. But of course, it'd probably be still $15. But
yeah, totally. Totally.
I remember I think how I got into Bad Brains. I think it was Skank and Pickle for their Green album in 1996. They covered "Pay to Come."
Oh,
and then
yeah,
I'm
totally.
what band is this? And then then I'm like, wow, this band's really good. That was like, surprisingly, I don't think that was a band my brother got into. I don't think he got into Bad Brains until I think we kind of got into it together. When I'm like, check out this band. He's got kind of reggae and then they do hardcore punk. Yeah, and of course, like Sex Pistols, like kind of the same thing as like the Ramones, where it's like you listen to them, like, oh, they're kind of punk and whatever, but it's not like, oh, I'm listening to a punk band kind of thing. It's you don't get that mentality when you're a kid. You don't care about like splitting genres, and it's just like they're just they're the Ramones. Yeah.
Well, that was the thing about like the kind of like, if you will, the holy trinity of punk bands, like with the Ramones, the Clash, and Sex Pistols. I was like, oh, the Ramones, the Clash, and the Sex Pistols. Like, so like when, you know, I started really getting into punk, it was because of bands like the Descendants and Social Distortion, and like, you know, No Effects for me was a big one. Bad Brains, Suicide Machines, because like those, and maybe it was generational, maybe it was just, you know, they felt more like weren't on the radio. This is underground sort of stuff going on.
Yeah. Underground radio. That was, definitely, but like not even the college radio, but the ones that are like just going somewhere and just like, I think this music sounds okay. And like, it could go either way of being like really like kind of music, or it's just like certain like underground, like you can just get some static every once in a while. Yeah, I remember those days. It was like we had to go drive in the car just to like pick up certain like stations in New York City, because we were in the suburbs of like an hour north of New York City. So sometimes we had to go in the car and drive somewhere to go listen to some music like that, to discover some bands.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It made it feel, and I totally know what you mean. I mean, like there was, DC had a really good radio station, alternative station growing up. And like at night they would play like, I don't know, like I would consider, even though it was on the radio, it was definitely more underground stuff. So like whether it was local DC kind of punk stuff, or like Discord stuff, or even just like, you know, like, I remember the first time I heard the Boss Tones on the radio was at like 1 a.m. on this station. And there was something about it that just, the fact that you kind of had to work for it. Like, I remember like going back to the like kind of the MTV2, the M2 story. It was like, I would put a VHS tape in and hit record and just let it run for like 4 hours to see what I could get. And like, you know, out of it, it'd be like, oh, like there's a block of like 5 ska videos in a row. That's awesome. Like, and you know, and then like, you know, and then I would play the whole editing game where it's like, okay, I have the camcorder, I have the, you know, VCR, I'm going to splice this all together and make like almost like a mixtape of videos. And, you know, having to work that hard, like having to, you know, like you were saying the story about like driving around. I remember like getting certain radio signals at night, and I could only get them at night. And a lot of them were like college and underground stuff.
And it's like people just don't know how hard it was. Just like, and then Napster and stuff came, and it's like, oh shit, and like just download everything. And then it's like, I think, and then you discover so much more. It's like, wow, I'm like, I never heard of this band. I never heard of this band. Never heard of this band. And it's like, it's a blessing in a curse when it comes to file sharing. But I mean, I discovered so many bands. Hey, and I paid it forward.
Totally.
Yeah, and I paid it forward buying people's merch, and I discovered the Levelers from the UK from file sharing, and then I flew over to see them like 3 times over in England. I'm like, I paid my dues.
Totally. I mean, it was one like Napster. I was at the exact right like place and time for Napster because like I was in college. I had a T1 line. Like it's like let her rip, and it's the same thing here. Like I remember like I remember finding like Pilfer's bootlegs of like stuff that
it's probably I remember the bootleg that we recorded at Coney Island High was the one that people kept resharing of the Pilfers, and it was like our bootleg that we did, that we put out there, and like, oh, sorry, but I'm like, at least it's documented.
Totally. I mean, because there were songs like I remember like Chain Reaction and like Flicker that they obviously they recorded them, but it like I found them on Napster, and it's like, yeah, that's definitely Vinny and Cooley. Yeah. So this is like, because there would be so much like misnaming of things as well.
Yeah, that was so annoying. Yeah.
I mean, and totally. I mean, there was definitely, while it wasn't like necessarily some of them foundational, there were definitely a lot of bands that I discovered and got to try out too, because it's like, oh well, I can't really afford this CD and I didn't like the song off this comp, but this band's pretty sweet, so like I'm gonna listen to this. And I don't know, I feel like you and I and a lot of people probably listening to the podcast and everything are of this ilk, but we're definitely going to make sure we pay this forward. Like you said, like, I'm not just going to download this stuff and be like, you're on your own piece.
Yeah. I got to go buy their shirts. Going to go buy their other past stuff or even going to buy, the album that you got. You just probably to get a better version of it, because sometimes it was only like 128 or something like that, kilobytes or whatever, for the file type. So I mean, a lot of the times it was like shitty quality, but just that you got it and like, oh, this sounds good. Okay, now I'm gonna go buy the CD of it and make sure I have like a good copy of it. But a lot of the times, like for my thinking of it was like, well, I can either go and just ask the band to send me a CD, or I can just, oh, here it is. I can just review it that way. So kind of in my justification of file sharing over the years, it was kind of like, well, I'm promoting the bands. Like, let me have this.
Oh, totally. Yeah. We get a pass.
Yeah, we got to pass. Other people, you definitely shouldn't have done that. Do you remember your first ska show though?
So the first show that I went to that had like a ska punk band was a DC local show, and the band was called the Nut Rags. But they were guys from my high school, and it was one of those band names that I'm sure they all to some degree regret today, but it was cool. I mean, it was like these kids like from my school doing that. The first show that I went to that was like a show though was that show. It was the 930 Club in DC, and it was the Blue Meanies, Real Big Fish, Weston, Goldfinger show. Okay. And this is, this was when, I mean, Real Big Fish may have already when I went to it, they had definitely released Turn the Radio Off, but it was like before they had, really started hitting with radio or anything like that. And I originally went to specifically see them because, I loved the song off of I love the song that I had seen on M2, Everything Sucks. And it was like this was going to be like my band. And, went there and spent way too much money on merch for like it was like, honestly, it was probably like $20, but like I was 16 and it was like, this $20 is like, definitely I'm investing it into this band. That's my band. And But yeah, that was the first.
West, you're bringing up Weston. I'm like, it's bringing me back bad memories of like I never liked them, so it's kind of like they were always on ska shows, and it's like why? And it was always a time I was like just completely bored during their sets. I mean, maybe if I went back to listen to their music now, maybe I would enjoy it. But it was like they were kind of like emo, right, or some kind of in a way.
Yeah, like I like. Back when I was like 16 years old, definitely I felt I felt the same way. Like that show I was just talking about, like Weston played right before Goldfinger, and there was this like Blue Meanies, Real Big Fish, Momentum, and it was like they weren't listed on the show. The Goldfinger show, it was only supposed to be those three bands, but I think they were from Philly, so they just came down to DC, and there was this weird like what's going on, like where's Goldfinger, like it being my first show and kind of confused, so. It, it was, I definitely hear what you're saying with that.
Yeah. My first like ska show was Perfect Thyroid. I don't know if you know them or not.
Yeah,
okay.
Totally.
Yeah, because they're from my area. So they're from like the Hudson Valley, Orange County, New York. So I saw like they were played like a free kind of like outdoor kind of festival with some other bands, and so I got my first taste of like ska, seeing them, and I'm like, what is that? And then I saw the Let's Go Bowling show with Chris Murray and who the hell? Sergeant Scagnani, Conehead Buddha, and that was like my first ska show, and it was just like seeing how everyone was dancing at the ska show. I was like, wow! I'm like, what is this? Yeah. It was just like, and then seeing like skinheads walk up, and I'm like, what the fuck kind of show am I going at? Right? It's like I didn't know. Like I didn't know. I thought that like all the skinheads were Nazis. And,
yeah, that's totally when you're a kid going to shows for the first time, and you're like, I don't know what a sharp is. Like,
yeah,
because there were definitely shows that I went to where like there was because I'd go see the Skoidats and Inspector 7 a lot, and like, the first time that happens, you're like, I'm not sure about this. What's going on?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, okay. But yeah, I think like, the Real Big Fish show is definitely one of my first ones, but I feel like the first time I saw the Toasters, it was like almost a, and now you are knighted, like, Lord of Ska sort of thing. It's, I got to see them in kind of that like Sledge era lineup,
with Jack Ruby or with Cooley.
It was with Jack. It was after Cooley had left.
Yeah, that was right. 96 was the first time, and then Cooley just left. I was like, fuck, man.
Yeah. And so like, and yeah, it was, one of those shows that was just like, okay, like, I'm in this, like, this is, definitely a scene that, I'm still part of, but, that was one that was definitely kind of put me over, on the genre. And, I saw a lot of, the first time I saw the Pilfers was in, I think, 98. I think they were opening for Real Big Fish at the 930 Club. And, I don't think I can say enough amazing things about that band and their live show. Like, even, I saw them probably the most in the city of Pittsburgh. And even then I probably saw them like 6 or 7 times. And it's just like every single time was amazing. The band was amazing. They're great people.
Yeah. Still friends with them and, doing merch for them every once in a while. And
yeah.
That
was a great show.
Yeah, seeing the Pilfers for the first time was that, like when I was telling Cooley, I'm like, it was like mind-boggling that like that it was almost like a religious experience. It was like, wow, these guys are so awesome. And then
it was just something you hadn't heard before, and it was like, I definitely, this is a new sound, but it's familiar
of everything that we liked,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I remember kind of as I, getting into like this like second wave of bands that I like. You know, got into my first things, but I remember like the bands that were like completely mine were like, you know, Pilfers and Edna's Goldfish were definitely those two.
Yeah.
You know, just, and I feel like too, even, you know, cause I used to be even back in the day, read ska punk and other junk, and just, you know, there was just such a great like scene around like those bands, and
it seems like those were the only shows we went to was Edna's Goldfish or Pilfers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only other band that I would add to that, and it's not because I'm necessarily a gigantic fan of theirs, but for whatever reason, Catch-22 played every single ska show in Pittsburgh, despite being a band from New Jersey. Like, you name it, like they were on it. Yeah,
and there were one band that I was like, I liked some songs. They weren't like the band for me, but I was like, I would definitely enjoy a few songs here and there of them. Not as much as everyone else. That like certainly like Streetlight Manifesto of how people like praise them still to this day.
Right.
But I mean, it would have been pretty cool to see them play with that big orchestra that they were doing like at Radio City Music Hall. I'm like, how is this fucking band playing at Radio City Music Hall? But I'm like, I don't know. I never got it. I don't know. Other people did, but
yeah. And it's not for lack of trying. I mean, like, you know, I feel like there's some of those bands where like you see them live and you're like, okay, I get it now. And like that one just never clicked for me. But on the flip side of a band that absolutely clicked for me was Spring Heeled Jack. You know, that was you know, I saw them so many times. I saw them with Dance Hall Crashers. I saw them with Pilfers and Pie Tasters, I think once.
They would play the Pie Tasters a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Pilfers, which they're playing next week, I think, with them in Connecticut, like with the original lineup.
Wow.
I think they're doing, it's like 20 years of songs of Suburbia, so I think they're like JR's going to be playing there, I think, and some of the other guys, like names are losing right now, but whatever. Yeah, but the original guys are going to be there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been in the hospital. It's like kind of, I don't know.
Preoccupied.
Yeah, just a little bit.
But no, that was it's just such great high energy. And, yeah, I mean, I remember there being one show in Pittsburgh that was like Pilfers, the Smooths, the Scofflaws, and I think it was Spring Heeled Jack was on that as well. And it was just one of those, you know, amazing bills that even in like 99, when stuff was kind of on the downtrend, it, you know, in terms of the popularity of the genre, like, if you were at that show, man, I mean, like that was some incredible stuff. I mean, those bands were still on fire. They still had, you know, great lineups and all of that.
Man, I only saw the Smooths once, and I think they played last year with the Ballstones, like they reunited. But
yeah,
but they were one of those bands that like I wish I saw them. I wish I saw more of them, and I'm surprised they didn't reunite for Supernova. That's going to be happening in 2020. I feel like they're like the only band that's from that area that isn't going to be playing right there. But I think the saxophone player, from doing some research, I think she's like a doctor or something now, and I think in the Midwest somewhere. So I think it's kind of I think she's a bit busy to be playing in ska bands.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those. It's definitely one of those bands that I was so happy, like living in the area, that I got to see live. They were fantastic. I remember talking to their guitar player a lot after some of their shows, and just they had gone on tour, I guess, with No Use for a Name, and there was just such love that they had for that band, taking them out and everything.
Well, yeah, I guess they did tour a bunch because they were on Side One Dummy, but
totally.
I only saw them on Warped Tour though.
Yeah, they were, well, and that's kind of why, because there was this affiliation with Side One Dummy and the Warped Tour where you know, they were one of the first bands. I still remember, like, you know, with every Side One release, getting the catalog, and it was like the Smooths, 22 Jacks, and you know, I don't know what the affiliation exactly was with the Warped Tour, but they definitely had one and played those shows a lot.
All right. is there any other bands that we left off on the list that you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
We covered so many. I mean, even the ones that we didn't, like we talked about the Suicide Machines and how amazing they were, the Boss Tones.
Obviously the specials.
Yeah, there is the specials. The one I would be remiss to leave off before we end, it would be Operation Ivy. I mean,
I don't know when I got into them. It was probably like 95, 96, like around this when I just started getting into stuff. Yeah.
That's around the time. It's probably like 96 for me. Seems to be the band that, like, honestly, like, no matter what genre that people are into, whether it is ska, punk, hardcore, everyone just like circulates around that band, and they were just so influential. Like, people who hate ska love that band, and it's just such an influence. And like, even I mean, Rancid's and Out Come the Wolves was a huge touchstone for me as well. But, Op Ivy, I mean, they just had everything. It was the political lyrics. It was the, no pun intended, but the energy of the band. The ska, the ska that they blended so well.
The knowledge that they had. No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, Brian, you may want to take warning before I give this next point, but
go down to Hoboken because I'm going to go yell in your ear. Yeah. Go.
You could probably go on forever with Operation Ivy. But no, it was so incredible. I mean, that band and everything they did.
My friend Chris was talking to me when we saw the Misfits. He's like, what would be another band that would play? Do you think that would be able to play at MSG? And then I was thinking, I'm like, well. This is like after the fact. I'm like, Operation Ivy they would totally sell that thing out in 2 seconds if they played.
Oh, totally.
It. But
I mean, there's only two bands, I think, at this point. I mean, people can say the Smiths, but Morrissey plays a lot of Smith songs. But I feel like the two bands that haven't gotten back together, and I don't know if they ever really will, are Operation Ivy and Minor Threat. And Minor Threat, I think, they're not going to do it. I mean, just kind of knowing everything about the band and the way kind of Discord and Ian run. But I still hold out hope that one year at like Punk Rock Bowling or at the Fest or at Riot Fest, that it's going to be like, you don't want to miss this. But like, I mean, they could literally just play one song. Yeah. And I'd be like, okay, I'm good.
Or even like Nick Jones and like some guys doing like the Clash, doing just like
exactly,
even like having Tim Armstrong play with like the Clash or something. That would be like perfect, I think.
Absolutely.
As you can get. I mean, with Joe Strummer being dead, but like something like that, I can see happening. It's like money talks. It's like you didn't think Misfits were gonna be. I didn't think Misfits were gonna be playing with dancing.
Hell no.
And it was great. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't get to go to any of the shows, but everything I heard from like everyone about, I mean, the two that I would have thought never would have happened would have been them and Jawbreaker, and then Jawbreaker got back together and everyone like collectively lost their minds. And then, the Misfits just, I mean, Madison Square Garden's no joke.
Yeah, you're on the clock, Operation Ivy. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
2020, it's going to happen.
You're a lone holdout. We got to get you in there.
Yeah. But all right, I think we're gonna wrap things up here. I gotta go take a pee, so
sounds good.
But yeah, this is fun. I mean, I could obviously talk about this for like another hour and a half, but not gonna do that. But let's chat some more in the future and stuff. This is great.
We'll come up with some ideas and bounce them off each other.
Yeah, I'm gonna have plenty of podcasts I'm going to need to do since I'm going to be stranded at home since I can't drive. Yeah, but
that's horrible.
Yeah, for the next couple months. But
yeah,
medical reasons.
Yeah.
Good old being old. Yay.
I mean, you have once Disney Plus works out their streaming problems, you got a bevy of content.
Well, I was going to watch that tonight, but I'm like, I got a podcast. So I'll watch it tomorrow morning. I was watching some of the animated shorts of Disney Plus, but just not The Mandalorian yet. Everyone's like talking about it. I'm like, oh, you fuckers better not spoil it for me. That's like I'm hoping like that why they're just releasing like one episode a week, so I don't get spoiled from all these sites that are like, we watched everything already, and it's like, fuck you.
Right. No, I think that's going to be I won't spoil anything. I did watch the first episode before this. It's definitely what I'll say about this is it definitely has a cool vibe to it. I mean, it is like
definitely looked like
yeah, it has this Western vibe, but like it's just a really, really, they captured the feel perfectly.
Nice. And plus, obviously, I got to watch Jeff Goldblum's series. Oh,
yeah, obviously.
Yes.
I saw previews for that, and I'm like, this is amazing.
I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's like ReadJunk. It's like he's like our unofficial mascot.
Totally.
I don't even know who started that. I think Adam started that, but I just kind of went along with it.
Yeah.
And he's actually playing, I think he's playing today or tomorrow in the city, and I still haven't seen him live play one of his jazz stuff. I'm like, man, I got to get there and take some pictures of him.
Totally.
But, all right. Till next time, man. All right.
Take it easy. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.